"I will not be your wife." Autumn's scream echoed through the main hall like thunder, making all 47 people in the community freeze. The 13-year-old girl was standing in the center of the dining table, her simple dress trembling along with her body, while she stared at Patriarch Josiah, the 67-year-old man who would be her husband in less than 24 hours. The silence that followed was deafening. No one in the history of Celestial Springs had ever challenged a matrimonial assignment, especially not a girl, especially not on the eve of the wedding. Josiah rose slowly, his white beard trembling with "Eesh." His small, cruel eyes gleamed with a fury that made grown adults tremble. "Sit down, child. You are possessed by the demon of rebellion." "No!" Autumn screamed even louder, her voice cracking with emotion. "I know you saw my embroideries. I know you know what I did." It was then that she pulled the tablecloth with desperate force, revealing dozens of embroidered napkins scattered like cards from an explosive deck. Each one contained a message in Morse code carefully embroidered between flowers and decorative patterns that had gone unnoticed for months. SOS help, trapped, child abuse, forced marriage, save us. Chaos exploded instantly. Women began screaming. Men shouted contradictory orders. Children ran in panic. But at the center of the storm, Autumn remained standing, holding a specific embroidery, the one that contained the real names of the abusers and the exact location of the community. But our story doesn't begin here. It begins 6 months earlier, when Autumn discovered that her days of freedom were strictly numbered. Autumn Mackenzie always knew something was deeply wrong in her isolated community, in the arid mountains of Utah. It wasn't normal for girls her age to disappear from the small school to become blessed wives overnight. It wasn't normal for babies to be born with obvious deformities because of constant marriages between close cousins. And it definitely wasn't normal for Patriarch Josiah to visit the younger girls' dormitory during his so-called private spiritual blessings. The community of Celestial Springs had been founded in 1953 by fundamentalist Mormons, isolated in the Utah mountains. Without electricity, phones, or connection to the outside world, they lived under the absolute control of the patriarch. Autumn always questioned why women couldn't study beyond age 14, why they were forbidden to talk to men, why the patriarch decided their marriages. But it was only when her mother, Charity, appeared at her door one October afternoon with eyes red and swollen from crying that Autumn understood the nightmare had finally reached her. "The patriarch has chosen you," Charity whispered, the words coming out like ground glass from her throat. Her hands shook uncontrollably as she held an official letter sealed with the community's symbol. "The ceremony will be in 3 months. You must begin preparations immediately." Autumn felt the world crumble. At 13, she had barely kissed a boy, let alone thought about marriage. The idea of being touched by Josiah made her stomach turn. "Mom, please," she begged, grabbing her mother's arm desperately. "I'm just a child. I still play with dolls. I still have nightmares. How can I be someone's wife?" Charity closed her. "Zumi, I was too," she replied. In those words, Autumn saw all the pain of a destroyed life. The family's history was dark. Charity had married at 12, had 9 pregnancies, lost 4 babies due to lack of medical care. But there was something more in her mother's eyes, something Autumn had never seen before. A small flame, almost extinguished, but still flickering. It was resistance. "Dear," Charity whispered, looking around to make sure they were alone. "Do you know how to make chamomile tea to calm the stomach?" Autumn frowned, confused by the sudden change of subject. "Of course, Mom, you taught me. And if the stomach was very, very sick, maybe you'd need stronger herbs. Herbs that grow up in the hills where no one goes looking." Autumn's heart accelerated. Her mother wasn't talking about tea. She was talking about escape. "Mom, are you saying that—" "I'm saying that sometimes, when someone is very sick, they need to look for remedies in distant places," Charity interrupted carefully. "And sometimes the person doesn't come back home." That night, Autumn couldn't sleep. She walked to the community cemetery. The tombstones told the real story. Sarah McKinnon died at 15 after childbirth. Rebecca Santos, 6 children, died at 28. Mary Thompson died at 13. It was there that Autumn swore not to become another statistic. But how? The answer came almost miraculously 2 weeks later, when Autumn was assigned to organize the attic of the communal house, where supplies and old belongings were stored. It was tedious work that no one else wanted to do. Cataloging dusty boxes, full of old clothes, broken utensils, and yellowed documents. It was while rummaging through a particularly dusty box marked "Property of Isaac Mackenzie, 1952, that Autumn stumbled upon something that would completely change her life. Isaac had been her great-grandfather, one of the original founders of the community. But before that, he had served as a radio operator in World War II. Autumn found a treasure, a military manual on communications, including Morse code and methods for hiding messages. Autumn's mind absorbed the information. If she could learn the code, she could hide messages in embroideries. The community sold handicrafts to tourists, their only connection to the outside world. For 3 weeks, Autumn memorized every dot and dash. She practiced during prayers, meals, lessons about conjugal duty. She created mnemonics. A was about time, dot dash. B was be careful, and dash 3 dots. Soon she was automatically thinking in Morse code. Her first message would be simple but universally understandable. SOS. Autumn decided she would test her theory on a simple napkin, something that would go unnoticed but could be seen by many people. She chose a daisy pattern, apparently innocent and decorative. 3 small daisies in a line represented 3 dots, S. 3 larger, more elaborate sunflowers represented 3 dashes, O. 3 more daisies completed the sequence, S. To anyone looking casually, it was just a pretty traditional floral decoration. But to someone who knew Morse code, it was a desperate cry for help. The problem was how to get it into the right hands. Autumn knew the community's handicrafts were sold at seasonal fairs in nearby towns, but only married and trustworthy women were authorized to make these trips. As an unmarried girl, she was considered too pure and impressionable to have contact with the outside world. The answer came through her sister Mercy, 4 years older and already devastated by the system that was now coming for Autumn. Mercy had married at 14 to brother Caleb, a 42-year-old man who already had 6 wives. In 2 years of marriage, she had had 2 difficult pregnancies, lost a baby, and developed a deep depression that made her walk through the community like a shadow of herself. But when Mercy saw Autumn's first embroidery one afternoon while they were organizing sewing materials, something lit up in her long dead eyes. "That's code," she whispered, delicately touching the embroidered daisies. "I learned a little in school before I got married. My teacher talked about it in a history class." Autumn felt an explosion of hope surge through her chest like electricity. "Can you help me?" Mercy looked around nervously, her hands trembling slightly. "It's very dangerous, Autumn. If they discover we're plotting something, they're going to destroy me anyway," Autumn replied with a courage that surprised her. "The difference is that now I can try to fight. I can try to save myself and maybe other girls too." Mercy hesitated for a long moment that seemed eternal, her eyes studying her younger sister's determined face. Finally, she nodded almost imperceptibly. "What do you need from me?" "Access to the products that go to the fairs, and time to embroider without being questioned." From that crucial moment, the 2 sisters worked on an elaborate and dangerous conspiracy. Mercy used her position as a wife to divert other women's attention during communal sewing sessions, creating distractions when necessary. She invented excuses for Autumn to have access to the best fabrics and threads, arguing that exceptional embroideries would bring more glory to the community and more money for collective needs. Autumn developed a sophisticated system. Different flowers represented letters in Morse code. Red roses were dots, white lilies were dashes. To casual observers, they were beautiful floral patterns. In reality, they documented years of systematic abuse. "Help me trapped child marriage cult. Abuse, call police." Each embroidery became a document. Autumn included specific information: names of community leaders, coded as types of rare flowers. Geographical location, represented through embroidered mountain patterns. Approximate number of children at risk, through the quantity of small flowers in specific corners, and even times when the elders held their private meetings with younger girls. The first fair was in Cedar Falls. Autumn couldn't go, but her embroideries were taken by 5 trustworthy wives. For 3 days, Autumn waited for signs that her messages had been understood. When the group returned, Sister Martha commented, "A retired teacher bought several of Autumn's embroideries. She said they were uniquely patterned." Someone had understood. Encouraged, Autumn recruited other girls. First Grace, 12 years old, who cried, "He touched me," said it was to prepare me. Then Faith, 11 years old, whose drawings showed traumatic scenes. One by one, Autumn taught code to 6 girls between 9 and 15 years old. But it was Grace who brought the idea that would change everything. "Autumn," she whispered one afternoon while they embroidered together, "what if we didn't wait for someone to find us? What if we said exactly where we are?" "What do you mean?" Grace took a piece of fabric and began embroidering quickly. "My father had to take supplies to Cedar Falls last month. He talked about miles, directions. What if we put that in the embroideries?" Autumn smiled for the first time in months. Grace wasn't just a victim, she was a strategist. Together they developed a coordinate system using embroidered star patterns. Each constellation represented numbers. Each position indicated directions. In 2 weeks, their embroideries contained detailed maps to find celestial springs. What had begun individually transformed into a factory of distress calls. The girls produced dozens of coded items. Autumn included specific information, names of abusers, locations, schedules. Her embroideries became miniature police reports. Helen Patterson took the embroideries to authorities. When experts decoded the messages revealing systematic child abuse, a federal investigation was initiated. The FBI assigned a special task force, mapping celestial springs using coordinates from the embroideries. But then, 3 days before the YXO planned rescue operation, something went wrong. Autumn woke up on a cold January morning to find community agents searching her house. Someone had reported the girls' suspicious activities. "Where are the special embroideries?" asked Brother Marcus, one of the community's cruelest men, holding Charity by the arm. "We know you're plotting something." Autumn's heart plummeted. If they found the remaining embroideries, they would discover the entire plan. Worse still, they would discover that other girls were involved. "I don't know what you're talking about," Autumn lied, her voice trembling. Marcus slapped her hard. "Liar, the patriarch knows everything. He had a divine vision about your rebellion." In fact, as Autumn would discover later, there had been no divine vision. Josiah had simply noticed that several embroideries had disappeared from products destined for sale, and his natural paranoia had led him to investigate. That's when Charity did something that surprised everyone. "It was my idea," she said, calmly, freeing herself from Marcus's grip. "I told Autumn to make different embroideries to attract more attention from buyers." Marcus looked at her suspiciously. "What kind of different embroideries?" "Flowers that look like children's drawings," Charity improvised brilliantly. "I thought tourists would find it cute." It was a plausible enough explanation to create doubt. Marcus hesitated, allowing Autumn to discreetly hide the most incriminating embroideries under other fabrics. But the damage was done. The rescue operation was moved up to that same night. Autumn only knew this when she saw strange lights in the mountains around the community, signals that something was happening. But Josiah had also seen the lights. It was January 15th. The white dress hung like a shroud. Autumn dressed but hid a bag with incriminating embroideries. In the hall, Josiah waited with his 8 wives. When he extended his hand, everything exploded. "I will not be your wife," she screamed, pulling the tablecloth and scattering the embroideries. The rest happened in a blur of violence. Josiah lunged to hit her, but Mercy and other women interposed themselves. Men tried to destroy the embroideries. Women began screaming. Children ran terrified. In the midst of the confusion, Autumn managed to reach the window and wave to the T-Hills, a signal she had embroidered in her last messages. But it was then that she saw something that made her freeze with terror. Josiah was no longer trying to destroy the embroideries. He was examining them carefully, his eyes widening as he began to understand what he was seeing. "Code," he murmured, looking at Autumn with a mixture of anger and something that looked like admiration. "You learned code, my clever little granddaughter." For a terrible moment, Autumn saw an almost paternal expression on the face of the man who had terrorized her childhood, and she realized something shocking. Josiah really believed he was saving souls. In his twisted mind, marrying young girls protected them from the corruption of the outside world. "You could have been my favorite wife," he continued, his voice strangely gentle. So intelligent, so special. It was this unexpected gentleness that broke Autumn completely. He wasn't a remorseless monster. He was a man who genuinely believed he was doing good. This somehow made everything even more terrible. The helicopters appeared at 10:30 a.m. The FBI coordinated a massive operation with agents from 3 states. When the first agents invaded Celestial Springs, they found a surreal scene. Josiah hugging Autumn like a proud grandfather, whispering about how she would be such a special wife, so intelligent. Autumn was in the basement with other girls, all holding embroideries. "You took your time," she told the first agent, smiling courageously. Agent Sarah Martinez found Autumn surrounded by Grace, Faith, Mercy, and other girls. All were holding embroideries that told their stories. "He really believes he's saving us," Autumn whispered to the agent. "Doesn't that make everything scarier?" Martinez, with 15 years dealing with crimes against children, nodded gravely. "The worst abusers always believe they're doing good, dear. That doesn't make them less dangerous." 6 months later, Autumn was sitting in a courtroom in Salt Lake City, wearing a simple blue dress that she had chosen herself, the first piece of clothing she had chosen in her entire life. In front of her, Josiah wore an orange prisoner's suit, his handcuffs clinking softly whenever he gestured. "Autumn Mackenzie," said Judge Henderson, "would you like to make a statement before sentencing?" Autumn stood up, her legs trembling slightly. "Yes, Your Honor." She looked directly at Josiah, who watched her with that same strangely paternal expression. "Patriarch," she began, using the old title purposefully, "you once told me I would be your favorite wife because I was intelligent. You were right about one thing. I am intelligent. Intelligent enough to know the difference between love and control, between protection and prison." Josiah watched her intently, slowly nodding his head. "You really believe you were saving us," Autumn continued, her voice gaining strength. "But I'll tell you what I really learned in my 13 years. Salvation cannot be forced. God doesn't need child wives to show his love." She paused, taking a deep breath. "And one more thing, thank you for teaching me to be intelligent, because I used that intelligence to destroy everything you built." Josiah was sentenced to 8 consecutive life imprisonments. He died in prison 3 years later, still insisting he had been a faithful servant of God. What happened next shocked 3 states. The investigation revealed a network of 5 similar communities. 37 men were arrested, including Josiah, with life imprisonment. More than 400 children were rescued. Autumn was adopted by Helen Patterson and is studying law, planning to work with the FBI. Mercy married for love and has a daughter. Charity became an advocate against child marriage. Celestial Springs was dissolved. In its place, there is now the Autumn Mackenzie Center for Child Protection. 2 years after the rescue, Autumn was walking through the University of Utah campus when a young woman approached her. "You're Autumn Mackenzie, aren't you?" the girl asked, who appeared to be about 16 years old. Autumn nodded cautiously. Her story had been widely publicized, and not all attention was positive. "My name is Jessica," the girl continued. I escaped from a similar situation in Arizona. When I saw your embroideries in the media, I learned Morse code. I managed to send a message through a drawing at school." Autumn felt tears in her eyes. You managed to get out? I did. Because of you. That's when Autumn knew what her true purpose in life would be. The Borderless Communication Program teaches codes to children at risk, already saving dozens of lives. Today, at 19, Autumn walks across the stage of a packed university. The auditorium lights are warm on her face. She can see hundreds of faces in the audience. Students, parents, activists, survivors. Every dot I embroidered was a step toward the light, she says, her voice echoing through the speakers. But the most important thing wasn't the dots I embroidered. It was the people who chose to decode them. She pauses, looking at the front row where Helen Patterson smiles proudly. True heroism isn't in asking for help. It's in responding when someone asks. It's in believing that a 13-year-old girl can have something important to say through embroidered flowers. The audience is completely silent. If you're here today, it means you can be the difference in someone's life. There may be other children, embroidering desperate messages at this very moment. In clothes, drawings, even in text messages. The question isn't whether they exist. The question is, will you pay attention? The silence breaks into deafening applause. Learn the signs. Share these stories. Because if we can save just one child, every dot I embroidered will have been worth it. The applause continues, but Autumn can only think of one thing. Out there, at this moment, other girls might be embroidering their own distress messages. And now, more people know how to decode them. Autumn's story proves that even in the deepest darkness, a single light can guide many people to freedom. Her embroideries weren't just cries for help. They were bridges built dot by dot, connecting despair to hopshine.